All right, welcome back to the Any Given Day podcast. I'm going to go for a new record in passing the torch as fast as possible. Today we have Joe Cruz. Joe, go.
My gosh, Nate, that's crazy. Nate.
no pressure.
No pressure. Yeah, man. Anyways, it's great to be here. It's great to have this opportunity with you. Our relationship has been, going for several years now. And so the opportunity to be a part of something that you've brought to the table that's so big, right? That's so visionary is really awesome. So I'm excited to be here, excited to talk about, whatever comes to the table, share experiences, perspectives. And hopefully we just make a great contribution to the community of veterans and the community of practitioners that are listening to this.
Well, shoot, I would say, and we'll get into it, but that's something that you're, already doing in so many ways. And in the same vein, I want to make sure to mention too, like your professional and personal support of Any Given Day and everything that it's about is greatly appreciated. We're also going to get into, you are the personification of Any Given Day, which I absolutely love. And then the last bit probably worth mentioning, this just came to mind, is that I can kind of recall every longer conversation you and I have had and like where I was. Like I was on the side of the road driving one time in New Mexico and I like finally found a good service spot. So I pulled over to talk and you were also driving and talking. Certainly I remember us chatting in the food court at like the BX or a PX kind of situation. Like I can literally recall those instances because I think we've had, while never enough, very, very meaningful conversations. So I appreciate that.
No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that has really been impactful and nurturing to our relationship, man, is that every time we get together and every time we have an opportunity to engage, it's just real talk. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? And
Yep.
so for me, that's huge because I don't know about you, man, but like this point, I've turned 50 years old, right? And feel like my circle has just gotten smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, man. And it becomes it's actually become more challenging to connect because people just kind of go off, doing their own thing or they're busy, with other things. And the circle you used to have that, we tend to have this tribe, this circle of men that we gravitate towards to talk about real shit, right? The realities of life, the struggles that we have, whether it's in our professional life, in our personal life, whatever the case may be. And so I found over the years that, that circle has gotten smaller but the ones that stay in there, I think the biggest challenge has been just being able to create more opportunities for meaningful connection.
Yeah.
Right? We get so busy and so caught up and stuff. And it's like, yeah, man, this is when I wish I could talk to Nate, or this is when I wish I could talk to Victor, or this is when I wish I could talk to, to Andy but everybody's got stuff going on,
Well, and I think people used to be like one room over or one tent over, right? You could just go next door and you're let's say it's a deployed environment or a work environment or wherever it is that you're surrounded by your friends. I feel like the ease of access was there.
Yeah.
And most of us we were all doing common things. We didn't have a lot else going on. But now that we have families and jobs that are pulling us to different parts of the country and all these other responsibilities. And to your point, when you have less touch points, it's now it means even more when you connect with people, but it's less opportunities for that connection. So it could definitely be difficult to overlap. So maybe that's part of the reason that when we do achieve that overlap, it feels so meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I cherish those moments and I try to maximize every opportunity I can, right? Whether it's, with anyone that's in that immediate circle to be able to share, grow, reflect, contemplate, right? Hey, I got an idea. And, henceforth why we've been able to collaborate over the years, right, with the H2F program in New Mexico and bringing you in to kind of pour into those young integrator candidates, right? And being
Yeah.
able to share not only the theoretical experience that you bring to the table, but then also the experience that just the entire experience, personal experience that you can bring to it. And then the people you bring to it that also bring that experience, whether it's a different background like JD, JD's awesome. He was on here not too long ago, and the way we groom our integrator candidates through that meaningful connection that is developed over the years, right? I think that's awesome. I think that's one of the main reasons, one of the things that has contributed to the long-term sustainability of that connection.
One thing too, I believe that you have the right people in the room. So whatever selection process, or pipeline that you've created to select and groom those integrators, the energy in the room for those workshops is incredible. And I've taught a lot of courses that feel a little bit like a one-way energy street sometimes, where it's like
Mm,
you pour, they take, and you're like, I'm not getting much back. And then you're just exhausted at the end of the week. Part of that is maybe the setup of the experience isn't done in a way that allows for more reciprocal interaction. And I try to purposely shape mine to where it is a little bit more interactive, as you know. But the other part of it is just having the people in the room who share some of the passion.
yeah,
And whenever I leave that workshop, I'm like, line it up again. Let's do this again.
yeah,
And it's an awesome, awesome experience because of that reciprocal energy.
yeah. No, I think you make a great point there, right? Because one of the things, and I'll say that it's very challenging because trying to get the right people in the room, right, means that, at least from my perspective of my philosophy, right, and this was a book you recommended me to read, actually, The Talent War, right? You hire for character and you train for skill.
Yeah. Yep.
So, when I look at the integrator candidates and when I look at what do we want, right? What we want are people that are passionate. We want people that are self starters. We want people that have personality. I don't necessarily need you to be a super like exercise science driven person. I need you to have people skills, right? Because emotional intelligence these days, social skills,
Woo.
it's interpersonal skills, hard to come by.
Anybody who's received an email from somebody under the age of 25 knows this all too well.
No question, right? No question. And so, we really try to express to the leaders because I'm not involved in the selection process. I can only, I'm only, advising and providing a blueprint of what we need, the attributes and competencies and characteristics that we need to have the right person in the position. And then it's up to the leader. The leader is the one that, and then not only is it up to the leader, but then it's, oh yeah, by the way, I'm a citizen soldier, so I don't do this full time. I'm an exec, or I'm a fireman, or I'm a police officer, or I'm a blue collar worker of some sort, right? So I have other responsibilities and things. So I may be the right person, but I may not have the time,
Yep. Yeah.
right?
Even the right person needs to be in the right situation for it.
100%. And so, we've had a couple now, and I'll tell you, I did the math, I did the numbers. And so since 2023, adding up all of the years up until 26, we had a total of 100 people go through this pipeline. And of those 100 people start workshop number one, by the time we get to workshop number four, which is the TSAC-F practitioner course, we've had 50 people survive the pipeline. And of those 50, 21 have successfully negotiated the TSAC Act. So when you think about it, that's that's almost a 50%. It's like a 40 some odd percent success rate. It should go up again. It should go up this year once the TSAC-F, this FY26 cohort takes the TSAC-F. But I think what an interesting point here is that one, um, the pass rate in the Army is like 39%. And in New Mexico, I think there are more guardsmen in New Mexico with a TSAC-F certification than there are in in the entire state of New Mexico, civilian wise,
Yeah,
right?
I believe
And
that.
so I think what's important there is to show, and one of the reasons that that I did it this way is because at the end of the day, there's gonna be attrition, right?
Yes.
There's gonna be attrition because not everybody who gets on the bus stays on the bus, right? You can start off with the right attributes or maybe displaying the attributes that um, you want people to think you have. But in the end, I think people's true colors they come out, right? And when the responsibility, when the additional time and the commitment that comes along with being an integrator starts to manifest itself and it starts to become a reality in the pipeline, people start to realize I don't have time for this. And that's where you separate the people that are truly impactful, that are truly passionate, from the people that are like, I think this is cool. Let me try it out.
Yeah. I will say this though as well for the way you had the pipeline set up, and I think this is really important. And I don't know how relevant it'll be for some of the folks listening, but oh well. Um, let's say they just did step one.
Hmm.
I do believe that that has a ton of standalone value. So even if that's where their journey ended as far as the formal education process, they are going to walk away from that more capable than they walked in. As compared to, I've seen other folks try to stand up a similar pipeline, and they did it similar almost to a college where they're like, oh, well, let's start with like XFIS 101. The problem with
Mm,
XFIS 101, right, is it ignores reality and it says, hey, this is step one for somebody who is no doubt going to complete all of these other steps. So, like, let's say that's a semester, and they're like, well, they're going to do 8 of these. And so we can start here. The difference is, what if somebody starts and ends there? They
right.
probably didn't get anything applicable out of it. They just got a bunch of abstract XFIS concepts that they can't actually apply. Versus you guys start with applicable concepts from day zero that they can then use and take with them, whether for themselves or the folks that they're in service to. And to me, that's a totally different way of doing business that, again, in my very, very biased perspective, makes the most sense because now you're not pretending every single person makes it through the whole thing. If they do, they're the best for it. But if they don't, they're still better for it.
Dude, I got to tell you, you just gave me a silver lining that I was not expecting. Not one bit. When I think about it, when I think about it now, after you've said that, we've touched the lives of 100 individuals. 50 of those individuals, although they did not make it to workshop 4 through the entire pipeline, they now have been familiarized with the essentially how you and I talk about it, the pillars of H2F, right? Sleep, physical, spiritual, mental, nutritional. And so what we've done in essentially is we've educated those 50 individuals to make a difference. Even if they don't make it in other people's lives, they make it in their lives. And that creates a potential buffer or mitigation for any type of corrosive behavior or negative behavior that could ensue thereafter. They now have been exposed to a program that said, if you have an issue with sleep, you go here. If you have an issue with spirituality or you have an issue with anxiety in your life or you're going through a troublesome time, there are people you can go to. So in certain respects, we've only I was only looking at it from the perspective of how many successful integrators did I develop, not from the perspective of how many people did I plant a seed in.
Yes, 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is why our engagements are so meaningful. This is why our
Yeah.
engagements are so meaningful.
I mean, it's undeniable that the impact has both the residual component and an exponential component. You could even go as far as say a generational component. Someone changes themselves, that could start to change their family. And yeah, not everybody's going to be the health and fitness leader that we set them up to be if
They
they were
are. Yeah.
to complete the entire thing. But better is better, and let's lean into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And better is better and better makes the organization better. Right. And it may not be relevant today, right? But it may or it can be relevant tomorrow.
Yeah,
And who knows
100%.
how that individual is going to react when they now become an NCO. They're an E5 or they're an E6 or now they're the platoon sergeant and they remember what they got exposed to when AGD came down in FY24 and they were like, I should probably reach out to the H2F team. And therein lies the cycle, right?
Well, and selfishly, since right now I'm a little bit more veteran oriented with this company, they're also going to be a better veteran.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be a better human after service.
100%, and that's key. That's key. I really like what you're doing with the space too, by the way. I mean, the fact that, you're reaching out to a community of people that, you know, oftentimes we I feel like it's the shiny object syndrome, right? Like whoever's in the media, whoever, there are a lot of people out there. And I think that's where we lose sight of the fact that, and why you're so important in what you're doing and pivotal is that there are so many people out there that are veterans in our community doing really great things that are not on social media, that are not advertising, that are not, showing, bringing it to light, but there's so much to learn, right? We only see the people that are actually in the limelight or in the media. But my gosh, man, you bringing the people that you've brought onto the show, sharing their experiences, like, let's go. Let's go. Let's go do it. It doesn't matter. Somebody said, let's go do it. So we went and we did it, right?
Yep, 100%.
Um, like it's just awesome to see what you're doing with our community, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that. And speaking of let's go do it, I feel like you're the king of let's go do it. And since you dropped it earlier in the podcast, you mentioned turning 50. And on the
Yes.
let's go do it / turning 50 front, you had quite a feat accomplished recently. You mind sharing that?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll take you to the beginning. When I turned 40, right? I said, you know what? I want to start doing hard things for my birthday. I want to start doing uh, I want to meet my year, the year that I was brought into this world with just the ability to say, you know what? I'm still relevant. Like, and it gives me a goal, right? It gives me something to work towards in the future. Because once I do the thing, right, whatever that is, and I think it's important to identify at the beginning that hard is not it's not open to it's not defined. Hard is relative, right? Hard is a relative term. Hard for me is different than hard for you, right? My thing could be like, I want to go do freaking open water marathon. Okay, that's hard, right? That's hard. But like, you might be like, hey, man, like, I don't know, freaking going to volunteer and giving of my time is hard because I have a finite amount of time with my
Yeah.
family, with my job, with this, but I still want to give back. So I do that, right? I think we think of hard as like, oh, it's physical. It's gotta really stress you. There's different stressors and there's different ways to stress you, right? So I just want to make sure I put that out there because I don't want anyone to hear this and think, well, you got to go do hard things that it's got to be physical. No, it's got to be hard in whatever spectrum that lies. So for me, it was physical because I just, I'm a physical guy. So I was like, let's go do triathlons. And so I was deployed in Afghanistan, in Jordan. And at the tail end of my deployment, I was like, that was 2017. I'm going to do the Amman International Marathon. And so I was like, all right, cool, let's go do it. So we did that. I got a PR, came home and said, I want to do triathlon. I want to do an Ironman. So then I planned that and I did like trained for 6 months, did a sprint, two Olympics, a half. And the next, I did the Ironman, right, in 2017. And that was when it dawned on me. It was like, okay, Joe, you just gotta do hard things every year. That's what's gonna drive everything that you're doing throughout the year leading up to that event. That gives me purpose. That gives me structure. That allows me to, in some respects, periodize my time so that I can arrive at day of execution peaking and ready to go. And so, um, yeah, so this year I was like, okay, 49. Like when for 49, I did Ironman Puerto Rico. And we also did like the Army 10 miler and so on. And then I was like, what can be, what can I do in when I turn 50 that would be equivalent to such a milestone? Because it's a half a century, right? It's a half a century of life. It's like whatever you do must be equivalent to or must be in line with that level of achievement. So I thought, well, I can just run an ultra marathon, 50 miles for 50 years. And truth be told, the ultra idea didn't come to me, just by divine intervention. I have a buddy who's an operator, and he got he got into doing ultra marathons. And he did the Devil Dog 100 and he's done a bunch of different things. And so as I'm going through this journey with him, supporting him and giving him feedback on periodization and training and hey, be careful with this and hey, adjust fire here. The next thing I'm like, I might as well do an ultra. So um I started training for it, right? And then I hit a set that sucked because I got a hernia. And of, in December of 24, because we're in 26. So December of 24, I got the repair in, it was crazy, Nate. It was crazy to go from, you know, doing Ironmans, doing marathons, like Olympic lifting and doing all this stuff to I have to roll to my side to get up. I can't just throw myself back and sit down on the couch. I have to put my arm down on the couch, support myself, put myself into position and lean back. Eye opening experience for me. As a practitioner, even more so. Because the ability to relate to someone that is now has to undergo a surgery and has to either do a shoulder repair or a hip replacement or a knee replacement or even a hernia repair, right? Like the ability to relate to that individual's hardship
Yeah.
is incredible as a practitioner, right? And so here I am. I told the doc, he said, look, I don't know if I can get you. He said to me, I don't know if I can get you in time. I'm like, Doc, I have Ironman Puerto Rico in March of 2025. I have to be ready to go. And he's like, okay, let me see what I can do. So I get a phone call a week later. He says, I can get you in 2 weeks. And it was December. So he got me in. I got the surgery. Boom. Shortly after, 14 days later, I go to Costa Rica. I start training in Costa Rica.
Damn.
Yeah. I and Nate, when I tell you, like, when I start training, I mean, I'm humbled, bro, because 10 push-ups was hard, like hard, right? To the point where you're sitting, you know, it makes me emotional because, I've been fortunate not to experience some of the hardships and the physical challenges that some of my compadres have felt, right? Recovering from an amputation, freaking TBI, a lot of the like serious challenges that we've experienced, right? And I'm sitting here, I'm in Costa Rica sitting down one evening and I'm sipping on a whiskey and I'm by myself and I start to feel sorry for myself because I'm like, what the hell, Joe? How are you going to get through this? Right? How are you going to do this? Like, you struggled today. You ran a 10:30 pace. You did 10 push-ups. Granted, you did, 3 rounds, but it was a freaking struggle, which normally would be like super easy, right?
Be a recovery day for you.
It's a recovery day. It's a recovery day. And so there I am, get through that. Had a good buddy that went with me, and I went with a group, and we were able to, like, he was very encouraging. He was just like, "Hey, coach, let's get it. You got this." And he ran slow. He ran slow, right by my side. Just ran slow, right? And anyways, fast forward, we get to March. We do Ironman. I did my best time was 5 hours and 50 minutes, right? For a half Ironman. I get to March and I did it in 6 hours and 30 minutes. So there I got the realization. I was like, okay, I can do this, right? I can do this. I can get back to where I need to be. So then the next thing you know, I continue to train for the Army 10 miler, right? And so I'm trying to get stronger. I'm trying to get mobile. I'm trying to get my core strength back. I'm trying to do all these different things. We go to the Army 10 miler. I go with my sergeant major at the time because I was, oh, by the way, doing battalion command. Yeah,
No small feat in itself.
no small feat. So I'm the battalion commander of the 226 MP battalion, right? I'm getting 2 units ready to deploy and go out the door to do a border mission on one side and a Europe, OCONUS mission on the other. Um, and then I get I get dropped War College on my lap as well. So now I'm a student, I'm a commander, I'm the full time administrative officer, and I'm the H2F program coordinator for the state. Right?
Couple of hats.
Just a couple of hats, right? I couldn't even imagine if that were to happen, and if I had been married with kids, trying to juggle all of those things, that would have been crazy, right? So there's always there's always that perspective, right? Of like my situation is hard, but then you always have to remember somebody's situation is harder. There's always somebody in a harder situation. That's why, when you can remind yourself that somebody else is going through something as or equally or harder than what I'm going through, that motivates me and that gives me that motivation to say, okay, keep moving forward, right? Keep moving.
Yeah.
Um, so then Army 10 miler comes and Sergeant Major and I convinced him to do it. He had never run a 10 miler, right? He's like a 5K guy. And I'm like, Sergeant Major, you're gonna have to do the Army 10 miler with me. And he's like, sir. And I'm like, sir, Major, we gotta do the Army 10 miler. We gotta live ready and win. You know what I'm saying? We gotta live ready and win. And so he's like, all right, sir, let's freaking do it. So let's go. And so we went, we did it. And then we signed up for the Coast Guard Marathon. We signed up for the Armed Forces Services Challenge, which is basically 3 marathons and 3 10 milers in any given period. It doesn't matter. You don't have a time limit. But once you're done with them, you get this really cool B2 bomber medal with all of the races on it. And, people take years to do it. So he's like, all right, we're doing it. So we signed up for it. Next thing you know, we're doing the Coast Guard marathon. And he finished his very first marathon ever in like 5 hours and 30 minutes, right? But you know what the beauty about that is? When we did the Army 10 miler, he caught the bug, and then his family started doing 5Ks. And then it was him and his daughter doing runs. And then it was him, his daughter, and his wife doing runs. And then he did a half marathon in Alamogordo. And so I think what's beautiful about this, and this is a long route to how I got to doing the ultra, but what's beautiful is that we, when we try to live our very best life and we try to live ready and win and keep moving forward and have that mentality of like, I'm never out of the fight. I just got to keep moving forward. We are contagious, and we,
Yes.
and I don't want to say infect, I want to say inspire other
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
to want to do more, right? And that's what it's all about.
By the way, that contagion is a two-way street, and it could be infectious in a negative way given different lifestyle components, right? So
Very
it's
much
like
so.
we're gonna move left or right of apathy, but it depends on which way, you wanna roll. Do you want to inspire or do you want to infect? And pretty damn awesome for somebody to go from being a 5K guy to lining up to run some marathons while now doing 5Ks with the family. That's awesome.
100%, 100%. And so the next thing my buddy was telling me like, hey, you should join me. And, like, we should do it together. I was like, well, you know what? I got to do something hard. Why don't we just do a ultra marathon together? So he's like, all right, cool. The next thing you know, he's looking for races. I'm looking for races. And, he says, hey, there's one in Denver. Let's do that. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. It worked out well with the time frame, right? So we established, I think it was 6 months prior or whatever. It was like December that we said, okay, we're gonna do the North Fork 50 miler in May, at the end of May. Too easy. Well, and therein began the journey, right? Um, Dude, I was dealing with plantar fasciitis. I was dealing with the still having issues with the hernia. Like, it sometimes felt like the repair wasn't quite right. Um, then in Costa Rica, I was going on a trail. I was doing a training run on one of the trails, and on a push off going an incline, my ankle just he got mad at me. Something happened, and I strained something, a ligament in my ankle or something. And the next thing I'm hobbling. So I'm running, but my gait pattern is altered, right? And working through all of those things. Meanwhile, um, I didn't come out of command until February 21st. I was still in command, still doing war college, still doing H2F stuff. And brother, I think the biggest takeaway that I got from all of this is you're never going, you cannot change that chaos is going to happen. Chaos is going to be, you cannot prevent chaos from happening. And when I say chaos, I define chaos as like, hey, it could be the kiddos soccer practice, the kiddos tournament. It could be your wife got sick all of a sudden. Now you got to take care of her. It could be, it's life. You cannot change the fact that life is going to happen while you still have to, while you're trying to train and meet requirements, right? Your own personal requirements. So what can you do? And the only thing you can do is manage how you respond and how you react to that chaos. That's it. You can't change the fact that it's there. You can't necessarily remove the fact that it's there, but how do you respond? How do you adjust the routine, the schedule? I had to go to micro dosing because I didn't have the time to spend an hour in the gym twice a week. I had the long run, so I had to get 3 runs in for conditioning. And what I did was microdose 4 of the days to get an hour of work, 2 hours of total work.
I think what happens too often too is the chaos ensues and people think they can wait it out like there's another side of it. And if we're being honest, there isn't. It just continues. It just shifts from one thing to the next. And so part of it, you have to accept the reality of the conditions that you can't change, but you also have to take responsibility for your ability to respond differently so that your interaction with the chaos can be still a beneficial one. You could, like you said, one foot in front of the other. We could still move in a positive direction, even if it isn't under ideal circumstances, even if it isn't at the speed at which, we used to move when we were A, younger, B, way less responsibilities, no families, easier jobs, etc. These are they're different times. The chaos is there, but you can still conquer it.
100%, man. 100%. And that's where I think these 3 kind of mindsets, right? These mantras that I've kind of developed over the years, um, live ready and win, never out of the fight, keep moving forward. Right. And I'd say keep moving forward is I can't, I don't, that's not mine. That's Rocky's, right? Rocky is the man. Rocky is
Yeah.
absolute man, right? So, you know, you got to keep moving forward no matter how hard life hits you or how crazy the chaos is. You move forward, but it's not moving forward through brute strength. It's strategically moving forward
Yes.
to make meaningful progress, right? Because that strategic move is what's going to help you help someone else through their chaos.
Well, I think part of it is people need to see what success looks like. And sometimes it's that person training alongside you that's going to either
Mhm.
inspire you or you might be inspiring them. Sometimes it's somebody you didn't even know was looking. But within this veteran community in particular, in the military community, you don't have to look far to see somebody who's doing more with less,
Mhm.
to see somebody who's living the same, if not a more extreme version of the chaos and still managing to succeed. And part of that is just strategic. And part of that is their unwillingness to relent. And so there's obviously a big mindset component.
Yeah.
Where that mindset comes from is different from all of us, but to use your word from earlier, inspire. I know for you where some of your mindset comes from, but I would love if you're willing to share some of that. Um, a lot of times we talk about like, hey, how you got into service. If what I would say is trying to think of how to frame it down a little bit for you, but if you think about kind of like your inspiration, one, to serve originally, two, what continues to inspire you to serve, but what also inspires you to be the best version of yourself and take on these challenges, not just physical, but otherwise. What is that underlying theme throughout all of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, oh man, that's a loaded question. Um,
It's not by
but
accident.
yeah, yeah. But here's what I'll tell you. You know, everyone's life, everyone has a story, right? Everyone has a story. Um, I think my story is hard, and it's hard relative to me, and it could be harder for other people, right? When they see it. But I think the biggest thing for me is my faith since I was a young man, right, has been a huge part of me. And so, when I wake up and what I've learned in my walk, in my journey with my faith is that, I have a purpose, right? I have that divine purpose. When I read my word, when I read the Bible and I read about, the promises that I have and who I am in that, it reinforces why I'm on this planet, right? I am more than a conqueror, right? Above and not beneath, the head and not the tail, right? It says, wherever my feet tread, that ground will be blessed. Whatever my hands touch, it shall prosper. It also says, you prepare my hands for war, right? And so when I think about my God given personality, and where the purpose that I have. And then I think about the life that God has given me and where the opportunities that I've been presented. Now, I joined the military because I was running for my life, Nate. I came from a broken family, mom, drug addicted, alcoholism, abuse. My father was never around, constantly in jail, drugs. I fought and scrapped as a kid because I was smaller, right? Like it was just freaking hard. And on the day I graduated from high school, I left the auditorium straight to the airport and got on a plane. 3 months later, in August, on August 17th, I joined the service. I was headed to boot camp, Fort Benning, Georgia, right? And let me tell you, I've not looked back. 32 years later, I served 10 years as an enlisted man, became an NCO, short lived period as an NCO, more so as a corporal, but as an E5, because then I got contracted as a cadet, got my dot coms, boom, right there. And off I went onto the dark side. Right. And so I'll tell you, so how does that translate into what inspires me now in trying to be the best, leader and person and human that I can be? You know, I think what's important is that, as leaders, it's our responsibility to inspire our people, right? It's our responsibility to teach, coach, mentor, build. Um, the Army's taught me so much about that. The Army's taught me about strategic thinking, right? And being an organizational leader, first leading at the tactical level, then leading at the operational level, then leading at the strategic level. Thinking about, there's a phrase that I use with my team a lot. And I tell them, I need you to think in decades. I need you to think about how the decisions you make and we make today are setting conditions for us in 5 and 10 years from now, right? Because that's the fight we got to worry about. The fight that we worry about is because if we don't understand and have insight into what will happen 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 30 years from now, then we will not have the perspective and the foresight to prepare to meet the challenge. We must evolve in flight. If we don't, then we arrive at day of execution unprepared, ill prepared, ignorant, and that's unacceptable. That is unacceptable as a leader. And so, that really is the driving factor, right? And I've been in so many situations where I've seen God's hand at play, both professionally and personally. I've had some really good leaders and I've had some not so great leaders, you know. I can tell you, like, I still remember, um, you know, then First Lieutenant Bruette, now Colonel retired Bruette, who was also at my change of command. I still know my platoon leader from when I was on active duty as an E4. You want to talk about meaningful connection?
Yeah.
He gave me my shoulder boards when I commissioned as a lieutenant in 2004. I still remember Master Sergeant Ward's words when he said to me, I was I had an issue, of course, young stud, right? I'm a young stud, and I'm freaking like, well, that person or that whatever, and I was not taking responsibility for my actions. And Master Sergeant Ward looked at me and said, "Hey, Cadet Cruz, let me explain something to you. When you're a lieutenant, your commander is not going to want to hear about why you couldn't accomplish the mission. He's not going to care about what excuse you have of why or why not. What you need to be asking yourself is, given the constraints that I have right now, how do I best accomplish my commander's intent? And if you can learn that lesson now, you're going to save yourself a lot of headaches when you grow up in the ranks." And at the time, I didn't take it. Right at the time, I thought it was like, why are you being so hard on me? Like it wasn't my
Mhm.
fault. But then I realized what he meant, and I've taken it with me the entire time.
There's an irony here of a lot of times as we evolve in a military setting, and I was just an E6 when I got out, so I only took it so far. But I feel like as you evolve, there's this feeling of, okay, if I could just get to a little bit more responsibility, I could change a little bit more. And I think anybody who's in the military learns you can never get to a rank where you have the total control that you've always dreamed of having. That said, when we transition into the civilian sector, part of the reason a lot of us transition is we want control. For example, for me, I knew I wanted to start a family. I felt that that could be really difficult in a military setting and that I
Mm,
wouldn't do well with it, where some people thrive with it. And so I thought, hey, I want to be able to control these conditions. So I'm going to go to a civilian setting where I could do that. And I think we see a lot of that. But ironically, I think a lot of folks transition into the veteran side. I'm going to catch flack for this, but they they find they find a spot as a victim. They find a spot as a kind of like, oh, I'm on the civilian side and woe is me and I can't change this whole world. And it's the mentality they had in the service, they continue. If they weren't taking ownership then, they're not going to take ownership now.
right.
And so I think it's important that, yeah, there are going to be components beyond your control, recognize them, account for them. Even if you can't change them, you can, to your earlier point, change your response to them. And you can still, carve out a pretty good situation for yourself and those under your charge. Very similar in the civilian world. There's always going to be things beyond our control. Uh, it's not woe is me, the sky is falling. It's, hey, what is under my control? How can I do my best to both serve myself, my own interests, and those of, friends, family, folks under maybe under your charge in a leadership position in a civilian job, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But that ownership component is so real, and it's such a buzzword that I don't think all that many people truly take ownership, and myself included. I've had some hard reality, dropped in my lap over the years of, okay, ownership means own your shit, and you're just not doing that right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting you say that right now because I think ownership is one of those things where it's like, how do you know you're taking ownership, right? How do you know that you actually are owning this task? And what I've told my guys, over the years is like, hey man, like I need you to understand that ownership is not seeing a task to completion. Ownership is seeing all of the things that are left to be done that need to be done in order to get the task to completion that you haven't been assigned, right? That's owning it. Like no one, when I tell you, hey, I need you to execute A, and you know, you take ownership of that task, you have to understand in your mind, you have to go through a process of like, what are the implied tasks associated with this?
Implied tasks. Yes.
Right? What are the
Yep.
implied tasks associated with what the commander wants me to accomplish? Or what are the implied tasks that I need to accomplish in order to achieve my commander's intent? Like when General Aguilar, right, my tag gave me this task of sitting across his desk 5 years ago. He said, Joe, I want to change the culture of New Mexico. I'm going to be the guy that says, which car are we taking? Right? Like to quote the
This is why
movie,
we get along so well.
right? To quote the movie, you call and I'm gonna show up, right? That's also my downfall because I have to learn how not to what's the word I'm looking for, Nate? How not to expect the same from everybody else because that
Yes.
shit's
Yeah.
not the same.
Yep.
It's
No,
not.
it's really not, and I have a good buddy, I won't say his name. In fact, what I should say is we were good buddies back in the day, and I still know who he is and kinda follow him on social, and he shares a lot of different perspectives, and one thing he had said is, "Don't expect everybody to show up for you like you would show up for them," and he pointed out, he said, "Even veterans, in fact, even, like, your Ranger buddy veterans," and that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true, and, I think part of being a friend too is knowing that and showing up anyway. I remember my uncle forever ago saying, "If you loan somebody money, it then think of it as a gift, and if you're not willing to gift them that money, then don't loan it to them because you should be just fine with letting it go. If they need it and you have it to give, then it's theirs to take, as opposed to you're hounding them to try to get it back for years and it ruins the friendship and all the things." And so I do think that there's some value in knowing that about yourself.
Yeah.
And it does mean sometimes you're going to be on that one way energy street, and you kind of have to just accept it, right?
Yeah. It could be a lonely street though, right? Especially as we get older. And that's why I value these relationships, right? That we've talked about your relationship and other relationships that are like this one because these are the things that they're when you get together and you get to talk about those realities of life, you know, little nuggets of perspective and silver linings are born, right? And are shown. Um, hey, but to shift gears for a second, I want to share something with you um, that I think is very interesting. And I want to, I want to double back to 50 for 50, right? And I just, want to share my experience on the trail because I think that's important. Um, you know, we started the race, me and my buddy, and the intent was that he was going to stay by my side. We were going to do this together, no matter what, right? And eventually, what ended up happening is I realized I read between the lines, and I could see that he was chomping at the bit. Like he's an experienced ultra marathoner, and he wanted to move forward faster than I could move forward. A strategy, and I couldn't afford to not execute that strategy on the basis of someone's emotional swing, right? And so I had to stick to my plan. So eventually I told him, hey, bro, you go. You do you. Don't worry about me. I got this. See you at the finish line. So he took off, right? Mile 38, Nate, it became so throughout the entire race, I threw up at mile 10. I threw up at mile 20. Like, I'm not talking about a little bit of a throw up, right? I'm talking about like I was letting go of my life. It was coming out,
All the demons.
all of it, right? And it was because I think at altitude, the gels just were not, they were, even though I trained using gels, for whatever reason, it just wasn't working. So I had to switch to pretzels, Oreo cookies, en route to the aid stations. And then at the aid stations, I had dates and watermelon and oranges and Coke and all the stuff that you wouldn't normally have, right? on a normal day. And so at mile 38, I get there and it hits me. It hits me as I begin to reflect and contemplate on the challenge that I've undertaken, and I start to pray. And it was more like a conversation with God, right? Like, I'm just in nature. I no music. It didn't work. There was no cell phone. There was no cell signal out there. So it
Not out
was
there.
not out there. And so began to talk to God and I was like, Lord, I'm so thankful. I can't believe it. I'm at mile 38. This is happening. This is going to happen. At the time, I didn't feel my body felt great. My legs felt great. Everything felt great. There was no, there's at 38 miles, you probably start to be like, okay, I got to get through this, right? At 38 miles, I was thanking the Lord for the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
I was thankful that I was healthy enough to do it. And I got to the last aid station, had 6 miles to go. And bro, my last, so there were like six different aid stations. There was one aid station that had me at like the highest, the highest pace I ever had, which was like 19 something, right? And then my pace dropped to like a 15-minute pace. Late race legs kicked in. The reflection took root in my heart. And I just felt like I am just thankful that I'm able to do this. It- and that's what helped me finish the race, man. That is what got me across the finish line, literally with a smile on my face, moving like I just run a 10K, right? I
Yeah.
wasn't moving like I had run 50 miles. And all the while I was just, grateful for the opportunity and thankful that I'm at a point in my life where I could do what I did, do it successfully without, any major setback. And that I could now take this experience and share it with others
Yeah.
and say, if I did it, you can too.
I love that. I love that the challenge became the gift.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. You always have a way
Yeah.
with words. The challenge became the gift. They were right. You're right. And and so I look forward, I think next year, coach, my coach, my friend, mentor, coach, um, he's my swim coach. He's awesome. Coach Utch. So the other thing I didn't tell you about this is in the process of training for this race, Coach Utch lost his wife. She was in hospice and she died of cancer. And I was supposed to go to the H2F symposium and I did not go, right? Because I said, I want people to show up for me. So I got to show up. And coach was like, hey, Joe, do you think you could come down? And I said, yeah, when? He's like 11 through 15. I said, let me do some things. So I canceled my trips and I drove to Arizona and I helped him teach and I supported him. And we did all this stuff. And then we talked and I said, Coach, I think next year I want to do an open water marathon. And he's like, okay, well, I got a couple places we can do it. And I'm like, okay. So next year it's James River in Virginia. Forget exactly where, but it's supposed to be wherever the launch point is. It's 3 miles up to the bridge, the James River Bridge, and then 3 miles down. You're going against the current. So for amateur marathon swimming, it's 6 to 12 miles, right, in the water. It's not a 26.2 mile run.
Yeah.
And then for professionals, it's beyond that. And so I think next year's hard feat is going to be an open water.
That definitely, when you talked about hard being relative, that's at the top of what would be hard for me. to sustain an open water swim for that kind of duration that would take some serious training. So
Yeah.
I'm stoked to see you take that on.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see. We'll see how it all goes, man. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, it's just about living ready
Yeah.
and staying relevant and being able, continuing to be an inspiration to others.
So I know, in fact, you almost just did it just now, unknowingly. And I feel like this podcast has already been a literal 60 minutes of answering the question I'm about to ask, but it's the one formality that I keep at the close of each of these. I guess in this case, we'll say we'll do maybe the Cliff Note version, only because it's going to be on top of so much great advice already. But what would be the one bit of advice that you would give to either in its entirety or a subcomponent or a specific person you could think of within the veteran community that you think would be valuable for them to take into life after service?
I'd have to say that would be to not let yourself be defined by what you do, but by who you are. You define it. And if in your life you can live a life that is an inspiration to others, if in your life you can look back and realize that in the army we talk about you're always improving your foxhole,
Yep.
right? So I look at this world and my life, I'm in a foxhole and I'm constantly just trying to improve it. And that improvement is what brings me joy and satisfaction to know that in some way I'm contributing to a little bit of goodness in this world. And if you can remain committed to doing that, you don't need a uniform to do it. You don't need an official title to do it. All you got to do is be you.
I love that. All you have to do is be you, constantly improve your fighting position. Joe, I knew it would be an awesome hour. It has been that and then some. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Anytime. We're having you back after the marathon swim, just so you know.
It's a date. It's a
Heck yeah.
date, Nate, for
Heck yeah.
sure.